today we're really lucky to have my colleague, my friend, someone who has an incredible reputation in the industry, David Picket, who is the CEO of Gotham organization. And for those of you who don't know, they have been building communities for over a century, 100 years. And David just told me that they built this building, which I didn't even know, so pretty remarkable. It's grown into one of the nation's most successful developers. They are thoughtful and detail-driven in their approach. And as the developer, owner, and manager of over 4 million square feet of property, Gotham organization plays an integral part in the cultural fabric of the cities in which they build. So, the purpose of these talks, the reason why we do them is because we kind of want to be open kimono. And for you guys, so people are interested in getting into real estate, or if you are already in real estate, like many of the agents that I see here, these are the experts, the ones that have been doing this a long time, and we want to learn from them. So, David, first of all, thank you, as I said, for being here. And could you just share with everyone how you got into becoming a real estate developer? What got you there?
Okay. Well, I should say, and Bess pointed out, my family's been in the real estate business for 111 years now, actually. So I'm fourth generation, and my three kids that work with me are fifth generation. So we haven't managed to screw it up yet, although it's had its twists and turns. I was an English major in college. I actually thought for a very long time I'd have a career in academia. My father took me aside and had a very long conversation with me and told me that might not be the best idea. So I did what all English majors do, and I went to law school. When I went to law school, I actually thought I was going to be a litigator, because I don't really understand why you go to law school not thinking you're going to be a litigator. And after one really bad summer of doing some of the worst dredge work ever, I came back to law school and said I got to pivot. And it sort of started my career down the road in real estate, because I became a real estate attorney for a couple years. I worked doing restructurings in the late 80s and early 90s at Citibank. I was hired as a lawyer, but actually sort of swung to the business side. And I think that's really what got me interested in real estate, sort of seeing it in its worst hour from the bottom up, learning how to take apart transactions and put them back together was really a very formative experience for me. And then in 1991, my dad had a development who was sort of not really developing. So I said to him, I think I can do a better job than that. And we sat down and we hammered out a deal. And I think I was 30 years old at the time. And I've been at the company ever since. So company's had its twists and turns, but it's been a fulfilling career.
And you got your law degree, you practiced for a little bit, and I think it's important for students to keep in mind that you might pursue a certain path and study and learn something, and it helps you become better at whatever else you're doing. I'm sure that you feel that going to law school hones certain skills like communication, how to think. So it doesn't hurt you. Sometimes you study, it could be business, it could be many different things, and then you find yourself doing something else. And I was a lawyer, I was a prosecutor in my former life. So you never know, but sometimes something else is calling you. So I think that's probably part of why you're such a good communicator and good at what you do, is that you also went to law school, which helps.
Well, I'll let you hold off on the communication part till we're done. But no, I would agree with that. And I know one of the questions you wanted to ask me was about advice, and the first word I came up with is patience. And I know that's a tough one for a lot of Gen Z and Gen Xers. They're not, I have them as children, and they're not very patient, right? Real estate, for the most part, is not an immediate gratification business. Requires a lot of collections of different skills. Of course, it depends which aspect of the business you're in, but certainly in development, there's a lot of different skill sets that go into doing it. So I may have jumped the question.
Yeah, but it doesn't happen overnight.
But look at your career. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a real, I slid into it. You sort of really pivoted.
But that's the beauty, I think, of everything is that it's possible. If you see it and you want to do it, you can work towards it. And I think you have to figure out what your superpower is, what you're great at, and work towards that, I think, for students.
And I think that the stuff you're collecting along the way, which may frustrate you and you may not think it is important at the time, later on in life you sort of call upon it and you're like, wow, I sort of remember being in that place, or and you actually draw on that reservoir of knowledge that you don't even realize you have at certain points.
Yep, so true. Well, it's no secret, and to any of the real estate agents that are out there know this, that the market has been a bit challenging lately. It's been difficult with rates and inventory, but also in the commercial arena, we know we have those challenges. How do you see the current real estate market trends impacting opportunities for people who may be considering getting into a real estate career, whether developer, commercial, agent? What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I guess I tell people to follow the money, right? Where is the money flowing right now? And to also sort of figure out what the geopolitical winds are telling you in terms of where money is flowing. Well, first of all, I should say that, our industry has changed a lot in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, there was very little institutional money that went into the real estate industry. It is now comprised of mostly institutional money. I mean, in New York, we still have big families who invest in their own deals, but even those big families, and I don't know if I'd include our family in that, we look to leverage our money in the best way we can. So you really have to take a hard look at where the money is flowing. Clearly, office buildings are not a favored class right now. Despite the fact that I feel like there are more and more people going back to work, this was a trend that was happening long before COVID, right? All you have to do is look at the accounting firms. I have a friend who's one of the biggest partners in an accounting firm, and he actually had to call his assistant to make sure he had an office to go to, like every week, because the way they shared space.
Right.
So that was a trend that was in the works, and COVID just sort of expedited that. And we learned how to work. Some of us, I didn't do too well, but we learned how to work away from the office. So clearly, it is a challenge. There is more pain that's going to be on the street. There's a lot of CMBS loans that are rolling over that are packaged with office deals and that's going to be messy, and it's going to take a long time for that to sort of find a self-leveling place where there's interest again in investing. I think industrial is sort of kind of run its course. The cost of buying industrial land has certainly dropped over the last year. Which was a favored asset class. Hotels are sort of coming back a little bit, but they're always sort of challenging. I think people are starting. I think retail is an example of a sector that's maybe found its sort of bottom, and there's some reinvestment going on. Multifamily tends to be the most stable of, and I speak about rental multifamily. Right. Tends to be the most stable asset. It's the most predictable income stream. It requires the least capital on an ongoing basis, not like an office building. And generally the flows in and out of residential are more consistent. Interestingly, the funds that invest in multifamily are, they come in lots of different flavors. There's opportunistic, there's core plus, there's core investors. The more opportunistic investors are finding now that they can meet their return mandates by simply buying existing assets. And that's not great news if you're in the development game. To get these institutional investors to invest in development is, I'm not working on one right now where I actually need it, but I fear that that's going to be a little bit more challenging because they're finding appropriate returns by buying existing assets. So a few weeks ago, we bought a building right here called The Air on the Upper West Side, and we bought it with Carlyle, and the returns that we're going to be able to generate by buying an existing asset are not, I'll still do better in a development deal, but it won't take me 5 years and countless hours and a lot of speculative capital. And that's a long-winded way of saying try and always get a sense of where the money's flowing. On the geopolitical side, we're in interesting times, right? We've seen a lot of migration of folks from blue states to red states. That's not a trend that's stopping. The city talks about population growth, and I think that's happening. It's not happening at the income levels that really help drive economic prosperity in the city. It's happening with the people you like to see coming to the city, and I hope we can continue to do it. It's the folks that really make this an interesting city to be in, the folks that are maybe earning $50,000 to $100,000 a year. But a lot of the big earners have picked up, and more importantly, they've picked up their companies and they've moved to
like Palm Beach.
That's something I'm not sure we've fully come to grips with that yet.
No, that's been hard.
So
for the city.
you need to follow the geopolitical trends, see where folks are going, and you need to follow the money. That's, I guess, my two pieces.
Well, also the other thing to point out is that it's more challenging out there in the real estate arena because money is more expensive than it was. It was so cheap for so long, and the Fed has raised rates now 11 times, and that hike has had an impact. Where money was much cheaper, people were taking all sorts of risks, and now today, even with residential, with mortgages, people are just being more cautious, right? And so I think that's also had its impact, especially with commercial. I think the private sector may have to get involved and rescue some people,
Yeah, no question. Interest rates have been a struggle, particularly since most deals were underwritten at rates that were obviously less than where we're at right now.
Right.
So anybody who is sort of like on the edge of having issues, this has been we're building a building on 10th Avenue and 40th Street, and we had to raise additional funds to put in our capitalized interest reserve. I mean, fortunately, we're doing well enough in other aspects. We've saved enough in other aspects of the project where I think things will balance out. But that's never a fun call to your investors to ask them to put more money. But that has to be happening all over the place.
It's just tougher times overall. So, talk to us a little bit about Gotham and tell me about some of your favorite projects that you've done. I know Gotham West, you did this thing called Gotham Living. Mm-hmm. We talk to us a little bit about that and why you do things a little bit differently. Share with everyone here a little bit about that.
Sure. We like to create communities wherever we are. I think we found coming out of 9/11 that folks were, understandably a bit skittish. That New Yorkers have never been exactly, knocking on their neighbor's door. But I think we found that particularly after 9/11, people were really sort of hunkered down. And we wanted to figure out ways to create community. We had always done community events at our building, but we sort of dedicated ourselves to creating more ways for people to come together. So our buildings, all of our buildings, we have this sort of Gotham Living thing. We have a Gotham card that connects you to the neighborhoods that you're in, allows you discounts at restaurants and clothing stores and anyone else that'll talk to us. And so this sense of community goes into sort of everything. So Gotham West, I could have put in the bottom of first of all, it's 1,200 units. It's over 4 buildings. It's an entire city block. It took us 7 years to rezone it. Two of the buildings sit on top of a railroad cut. So like the approvals I had to get, and what I had to go through to get this thing done. And then the retail we have is on 11th Avenue, and let's face it, 11th Avenue isn't exactly a retail destination, but yet, I probably could have put a bank and a CVS and, would have had a lot less headache. But we put in a market at the bottom, which was the first market of its kind in the city. So we have this food hall there, which is the old term for market, I guess. And, it's not been the most fun to manage, but I like to think it's offered another amenity to our tenants and another way for them to gather and commune. And it's just sort of part of the ethos of the company. We always try to engage with the local arts. When we built our building, we were the first tower to go up in the BAM Cultural District in Fort Greene, downtown. How you look at it, apparently my front door's in Fort Greene and my back door's in downtown Brooklyn, but it's part of the BAM Cultural District. And we also did another market there, probably not another from a headache point of view, not a great idea. But there's space there for 3 of the local arts institutions, Brick, Tafana, and I can't remember the other space we have, so we created these community spaces in the building for the local arts institutions, which are sort of the vital part of being, embracing that district. So these are some of the things that we like to do.
Well, this is if for a tenant, for someone who's looking at renting an apartment somewhere, to be able to come in and then have this whole community where there's markets and passes to different things that you can go to. I think it's helpful, and it's something unusual that I think more landlords are doing things to get people attracted to come into their building. But I think you guys were pioneers in that way, that you started doing that first early on.
Yeah,
and it's been great.
Right?
It's
to break
been
my arm, pat myself.
Yeah, you make the best of that environment to make it attractive for people who want to live there. Make it easy for them.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about something a little controversial. So we were talking about, during the pandemic, everybody was in lockdown. Then we went, once, things were opened up again, some companies came out and said, you got to come back to work. And other companies said, okay, we can close the offices, we can work from home. Some people are doing a hybrid. And I think it's particularly challenging for younger people who are going to go out to the workforce today, because I think if they don't have that sense of going into an office, showing up, getting dressed, having that sense of culture and community, I think it's a challenge to do things from a Zoom. It's helpful in an emergency, but should it be the norm? And so my question to you is, what are your feelings about working from home? How do you think it will impact, the next generation and how they move into the workforce and in real estate? What are your feelings on that?
Yeah, for me, working from home was miserable. So very selfishly, I couldn't wait to get back to the office. I tried to get my team back in June of 20. That didn't go over particularly well. So I said, okay, we'll take the summer, well, not off, but we won't come in for the summer. But Labor Day, everybody's back in. And if you don't want to come back in, there better be like a really good excuse.
Right.
And, a couple people we made exceptions for, but particularly the development team was back in. I think for older folks, I guess I count myself as an older folk, probably working from home is okay, because you've had the time to sort of develop these interpersonal skills, what I would call EQ, right?
Emotional intelligence, yeah.
But I think for younger people to not be around other people is just, you could see what's happened with little kids.
Yeah.
A lot of these sort of horror stories about them not wanting to take their mask off or, and things like, I think we need to be around each other. I think forget the work part of it. Socially, there's all sorts of statistics to show that, people who live where they're not around people suffer,
They get depressed.
grave,
Yeah.
sort of, psychological issues. But there's a lot you just learn by being around people, right? It's not all about what's on your computer screen. I mean, we work in a very empirical business, and that's important.
Yep.
But how you express yourself, how you relate to other people, your ability to get across a point, it doesn't translate well via Zoom. I mean, I know I really struggle with it. So
Yeah, I mean, I always in residential we always say we're not in the real estate business, we're in the relationship business. And I think your business, even though you do other things, you're a developer, you're building, you do all sorts of things from condos. You guys have done schools, hospitals, synagogues. You guys have done everything. But still, it's about getting together, seeing your colleagues. It's, seeing how you're doing, body language. Also, you feel your energy. You feel better when you see each other. A Zoom is okay when you have to. It's an emergency. But there's something magical about being with each other and share. And sometimes you're going through a hard time. You just want to say, hey, how are you? I heard this happened. Somebody needs a hug. All that stuff helps you in life. And you want to be able to look in people's eyes and shake their hand. Without learning those basic skills, it's hard. How do you go out into the world? Or if you want to travel and go to another country, you want to be able to engage with people. Life is people. And I think that's what worries me about this I think COVID did such a number on so many of us that people were like, okay, I'll just stay in my sweatpants and work on the computer. But I don't think I think it's damaging. I'm worried for future generations.
yeah, it's also, I mean, practically speaking, I find it can be a time waster too, like being on these Zoom, because I'll be we have these huge meetings, right? If we're at the early stages of a development deal, I've got architects and engineers and consultants of every, facade consultants, elevator consultants, we have a conference room that fits 30 people, and there's often people in chairs off the table because these things get so, you're in the, it's just because, and unless you sort of can control the talk time, these things can drag on forever, right? So when I'm sitting at the table, I can kind of look at somebody and give them the death stare, and it's it's sort of or if I'm sitting next to somebody, I can
what are you doing?
I found it just also to be just a massive, time suck.
Yeah,
so.
I do. So I just would encourage, I know we have to do Zooms. I get it. I do them all the time when we have to. I would just say there's nothing, I've been trying to encourage our agents, and a lot of them are coming back into the office to come into the office. There is something really lovely about, seeing faces and how are you, and, all of that engagement is just, I think it's better when it's in person, right? So, okay, so let's talk a little bit about public and private partnerships. What role does that play in Gotham's development? I mean, I mentioned you guys have done hospitals, schools, synagogues, luxury condos, rentals, affordable. So how do you, talk to us a little bit about some of the stuff that Gotham does.
Well, in the word huge, I mean, almost everything we've touched has had a public element to it, both from a financing and from a partnership point of view. A lot of RFPs we've answered are we finished a deal on the Lower East Side with the largest Chinese social service organization in the country, the Chinese American Planning Council, who had this empty site sitting there in prime Lower East Side, and they put out an RFP to say, somebody come help us develop this. We want to take back space in the building, but we'll ground lease to you the rest of the air rights that were above it. So in partnership with them, we then rezoned the site, which meant, visits to countless city agencies and
it's not fun.
Every stakeholder who ever walked the streets of the Lower East Side and its environs. in addition to sourcing financing from on the federal level, because we had tax credits, on the state level, because we had a tax abatement, which comes from the state. Not all people realize that. To bonds issued by New York City HDC. And everything we've done, in fact, the company for a long time was a contracting company. My dad really cut his teeth, really as a general contractor, and did tons of subsidized housing in the 60s and into the 70s. And we woke up one morning in the 70s and said, sort of, schmuck, why am I taking all this risk and making, a 3% or 4% or a 5%, and if you're lucky, contractor's fee. They were probably better back then. When the sponsor, who was the developer, has little or no risk and is getting, a 10% fee. I'm sort of like making this up a little bit. And that was really what got him into development. So the DNA of the company is heavily embedded in doing these public-private deals. We rely heavily on the state and the federal and the local government to either subsidize, provide bonds, provide tax credits, brownfield tax credits for everything we do.
That's incredible. You guys really do everything, soup to nuts. So
for better, for worse.
For better, for worse. Well, that's how you cut your teeth and you learn how to do everything. So for students who are thinking that they might want to get into real estate development, they want to do some form of development in some way. What's the education? How do they do that? Where do they start?
Yeah, I mean, that goes back to the sort of patience, word that I threw out, which I know doesn't come easy to you students in the room. I shouldn't, but I heard a statistic that the average Gen Z or Gen X will have 8 jobs before they're 40 or something.
Really?
Something crazy like that. Yeah. So it's a long process of knowledge accumulation, right? So I came about it. I was a lawyer, and then I worked at a bank. Was really forced to take a deep dive into number crunching, which was, very much anathema to me as an English major and really a humanities person. But it was sort of baptism by fire, and so that was my path. We also ran a construction company, a very large construction company, so I got to know that aspect of the business. I would never hold myself out as an expert, but I certainly know enough to be dangerous. And since construction costs are 2/3 of your budget, you miss by 5-10%, you got a loser, right? So I learned a lot by being around my dad and learning that part of the business. But we have other folks that have come to the company. I would say 2 sort of broad categories. One being architecture. They tend to be extremely organized. They are creative. They understand from a design point of view how deals come together and where design meets construction and where construction meets marketing, because they've seen that work. And then we hire a lot of people that have finance backgrounds, that know how to crunch numbers. They were probably in real estate finance, maybe not, because if an asset is an asset, there's a left side of the balance sheet and there's a right side of the balance sheet. But those are the 2 sort of pathways I've seen. There certainly are others. Like I'm a lawyer. That's how I got in. I'm the only one in the office. That's probably not a bad thing. I don't. Lawyer comments are really,
But there's many ways to. The thing is, you really can't skip the steps. You kind of have to. You have to go and work in it. You have to learn it. You have to get to know it, whatever it is, and you have to kind of figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the easiest way is through finance, right?
Yeah,
like,
that's one of the ways.
Particularly, I go back to one of the remarks I made before, which is real estate. Why we're certainly not rocket scientists, that's for sure. It's become more complicated and it requires broader perspective because when you're trying to attract institutional money for your deals, it's no longer a function of like buying low and selling high, right? Like, that was, it's much more complex, and the ability to be able to build large macros and, embed waterfalls in those macros, and so that you can speak to institutional money in a manner that they understand, it has become, there's no way around not having, at a company like ours, very strong technical financial people.
Right.
But I would not say it's the only way to, we have two excellent project managers, which is, really the puppet master in any development deal, that one, actually both came out of SOM, which is a large, architecture firm here.
Well, let's pivot and talk a little bit about affordable housing, because that's one of the challenges that we all know plagues not just the city, but the country. And we need to figure out ways, how can we build more affordable housing? So I just would like to know your opinion, any ideas, any thoughts, considerations? I know it's really, look, perfect is not on the menu. I get it. Like, this is a tough one, and politicians, everybody's trying to figure out, do you have any sort of ideas or views on this?
I mean, I just, I sat in a forum the other night with a bunch of sort of probably people more expert than me in this. And, the tools are all out there. I mean, we've done this before. I mean, in the 1970s, the city, I forget what the number is, the city was by far the biggest landowner in New York. They had taken back tons and tons of properties in REM. And we were producing 40, 50,000 units of housing a year for many years, through the 70s through the 80s and on into the 90s. And because we had the proper incentive programs in place, and a lot of really creative, Section 8 deals, Mitchell-Lama deals, a lot of really good tools, and we still have really good tools. We just have sort of lost our way a little bit in the sense that our politicians have confused creating housing of all kinds. They think that works to the sort of detriment of producing affordable housing, when the fact of the matter is we have to be producing all housing. There are plenty of subsidy programs out there, but those subsidy programs shouldn't be dedicated to deals where there are proven mechanisms for having the market portion of that deal internally subsidize the affordable housing. So, I mean, we, in our portfolio right now, not including what we're developing, but what we're operating, is close to 5,000 units. Probably 2,000 of those units are affordable units within our, market rate deals, if you will, right? So we've done a ton of 421A deals, affordable New York deals, which was the last iteration of 421A. Gotham West that you referenced, the Ashland, which is in the BAM Cultural District, those are 50-30-20s, 50% market, 30% middle, 20% affordable. And for the most part, the market rate portion of those deals was able to subsidize the affordable units, and that's what we've lost by losing 421A, right? We have a deal in, I won't say specifically where it is, but it's in a good location on the waterfront in Brooklyn. And we're getting, the local council member has said for me to approve this is going to have to be 100% affordable. Well, my response to him was, sure, you find me $800 million of subsidy and I will create I don't have a problem with that. I've done that for years. My first 5 deals before I did a market rate deal at the company were strictly affordable deals.
Right.
I said, that's fine. I said, I don't think it's a good use of your money. I said, I'm also doing another deal in East New York where that's all affordable, where that subsidy is needed. There is no market rate. Well, the market rate housing would not
it doesn't
subsidize the affordable, right? So these tools are out there. We've used them in the past. This is a question of where politics are sort of getting in the way of producing housing. I mean, the good news is I think the winds are sort of starting to move back. Like, I think City Council is I've had a lot of good discussions with council members.
Adrian Adams.
Where I think we have a much more rational City Council than we did last term. I think the mayor has said a lot of good things.
Yes, he's very supportive of real estate, affordable, the 421.
I think the governor has said a lot of good things. I mean, my dad told me something when I got in the business, which was the most important political body to us is the state Senate. And for years, you could it's very pro-business, we lost the state Senate a few years ago. When I say we, I mean, I'm a Democrat, but I don't, not that matters one way or the other, but the business community, if you will, lost the state Senate a while ago, and that has been a problem, because a lot of the incentives we get come out of the state legislature.
Right, and that's been sort of gridlocked, because it's almost like they don't understand that the 421A, which is an incentive to get developers to build and give them, they can't just do it for free. It has to make sense, and they're building affordable. But it's like, there's this narrative that, like, you can't build affordable and have money. It's very confusing today. Hopefully you're right that we're starting to see some change.
Yeah, I think we're getting to a narrative of let's just build housing.
Yeah, we need it. We desperately need it.
I mean, the lifeblood of this city is the folks in industries where they're earning, $50,000 to $100,000 a year. They also happen to have, from an economic point of view, the best multiplier effect is that segment of all their money goes back into, and we've also, really turned our back on those folks. If you really are hurt, I mean, we're a right to shelter city, so no matter what, if you want it, you're going to get shelter. And then, the wealthy are doing just fine here. But it's this sort of group in the middle that we've and that'll come back to hurt us. Yeah,
I agree with you. How does Gotham approach sustainable and environmentally friendly development projects?
So sustainability is a very difficult nut to crack, because the Fed and the state and local governments all have different notions and different rules around what sustainability is. So we try to pick a path where we can, on the margins, create as much sustainable development as we can without, putting us in a place where it's just, there are things that are just not feasible here in New York. There are other things that we can do on the margins, and we try and do everything we can in the margins so as to still create a financially viable development. But, so, in the newer buildings, we have trickle vents. We're no longer do PTAC units anymore. It controls the skin of the building better when you don't have louvers, popping out of every, We've definitely spent some money to try and be more, but there's only, it's when you get in front of a community board, like, these are the things, and if you're honest with people, you have to tell them, like, I can't raise money around something that's going to cost me more than I can be supported.
Right. Yeah.
So
well, you guys are doing your best. Doing the best that you can. Okay, so What's your dad? So David's father, Joel Picket, who was just honored at the Board of Governors for his role in leadership, and really has also an incredible reputation. Just such a nice man, a gentleman, I would say, is like the way to describe your dad. What did you learn? What have you learned from your dad? What stuff have you learned from him?
I learned a lot about the construction business, I will say that, but more sort of qualitatively. I think I learned humility. I think I learned how to be quiet. I haven't been very quiet, but
I've been asking you questions. He doesn't have a choice.
But what I most admired about my dad is he could sit at a table for an hour, without uttering a word. I think I've learned about integrity. He is. He's doing great. So I don't want to speak of it. But he's a very introspective guy. He's not a screamer. He's not a yeller. I think you do well in business by being honest with people, transparent. You can't last for 111 years without sort of this baseline of integrity. I think he taught me how to be patient. We keep coming back to that word.
It's a big one. And philanthropic, too.
Because in our business, it's a long, I've had deals that have taken me 7 years to rezone, right? So it's not an immediate gratification business. He's taught me how to be philanthropic, to give back, to pay it forward a little bit. I'm very lucky. He's a special guy. He's not very voluble, but he's valuable. You
come from good stock.
Thanks.
So I'm sure everyone's familiar with this company called NVIDIA. Has everybody heard of that? Alan Kersner, you've heard of it. It's an AI company that's now worth over $1 trillion. So Jensen Huang, who is the founder, was quoted as saying, "Resilience matters in success. I don't know how to teach it to you except for I hope suffering happens to you because greatness comes from character. And character isn't formed out of smart people. It's formed out of people who suffered." So I'm just curious to know, what you think. I think that's a really powerful thing to say because you don't learn in comfort.
Right.
And all the things that you really learn from are when you struggled or had a hard time. And so I'm just interested to know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think it's true. And having lived through at first the S&L crisis and then 9/11, the Great Recession in 2008, COVID.
Yeah,
right?
COVID was tough.
Look, there are people who suffer in this world. I've certainly, let's define what suffering is, right? But I think during COVID, it really hit me when we would have these, we have 250 people working for us now. I don't think they were all, we had daily Zooms for the first 2 to 3 months. And the first 10 minutes of every Zoom call was me reminding people that we got through. Well, no one remembers the S&L crisis. Probably no one in this audience even remembers the S&L crisis, but reminding them that we got through 9/11, we got through the Great Recession. This is another bump in the road. New York always comes back. We have your back. No one's going anywhere. I'm not firing anybody. And if I have to write checks out of my pocket, I will. And I think, that experience of having suffered through these things, and again, I use suffered loosely because
it's all relative. It's relative.
I think I was able to sort of walk some people off the ledge.
That's what a leader does, right?
So, and I guess I never really thought of myself as a leader until then.
Yeah.
Because really, I describe my business as like a bunch of deals knit together, right? So.
But you need somebody leading the charge.
But it's becoming more of a business.
Just in closing, what stuff do you like to do for fun? What hobbies do you have? share with us anything groovy that you like to do.
Well, I guess on the groovy scale, I've played the guitar since I was 8, so I like doing that. I like reading a lot. I play golf. I like being with my friends and family. Travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not that exciting.
Yeah, but you know what?
Maybe the guitar is a little bit exciting.
The guitar is very
Besides
exciting.
that, it's pretty pedestrian.
No, but simplicity is, always.
Yeah, I think, the ability to cultivate alone time is
It's heaven. It's bliss.
It kind of is, yeah.
Love it. David, first of all, thank you so much because you shared a lot with us. If I would encourage everybody to look up the Gotham organization. David is the CEO, buildings all over the place, wonderful guy, and really we're so grateful that you came for us for today.